Here's day 3 of the Corvette Chronicles. As you can see, I've got my fender cover out here, and we're going to go through some of the tools we're going to need to change the master cylinder. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at that. I have a vacuum bleeder. I'm going to use that to suck the fluid out of the reservoirs of the master cylinder so it's easier to handle. I've got a flare nut wrench or a tubing wrench or a line wrench, depending on what you call them, a standard combination wrench, universal joint, socket, a variety of extensions, ratchet, wire brush, and my pry bar that I'm going to use to pop the bales over. So that's what I've got going on today. There's the new master cylinder. It's been sitting in a box for a while, so it's got a little surface rust on it. I'll probably clean that off before we put it in. Okay, we're going to look at this master cylinder here. See, I'm going to pop the camera that way. There's the bail, not hit the camera. Pull those off. And look, let's take a look here. There's our expandable gaskets to allow for fluid to go down and not let air in it. But if you look down in there, it looks kind of black and absolutely disgusting. So we're going to get all of that old fluid out so I don't have to worry about it spilling when we start unbolting this thing. Okay, here's my setup. I've got a couple pieces of short clear tubing, I've got the bleeder catch can, and I've got my vacuum pump. So I'm going to see if I can't hold all this together. I've set that down there. I'm going to start pumping. It'll start sucking this fluid into that can. While I'm doing this front division of the master cylinder, I want to ask you, why is brake fluid dangerous, and why am I taking such precautions with this? I need you to think about that. Ooh, there's some sludge in the bottom of this one. It was fuller, so I'm going to have to go dump this again. I don't know if you guys can see this. It looks pretty good on my camera, but that is rust particles that have collected in the bottom of this master cylinder and are sludge. So here I'm going to get the rest of the stuff out of there. Okay, I put the lid back on so I don't slosh any fluid or any residue out when I tip this thing over. And I'm using my flare nut wrench, and believe it or not, the lines and the nuts on this car are metric. It's a 14 millimeter. So I'm going to break them loose with my flare nut wrench, and then once they're loose we can use an open-ended wrench to get them off. Now, why do we want to use a flare nut wrench instead of a regular open-ended wrench? I want you guys to think about that. Notice I got them both broke loose. Now the things you didn't see me do yesterday, I sprayed some penetrating oil on there yesterday when I was here working on the car, and I let it set. I put another coat on it today, and then I hit it with a little wire wheat brush to clean the surface rust off. So now that we've got them loose, I can take and use my regular 14 millimeter open-end wrench and take them the rest of the way off till they're finger loose. I do want you to know, why did we suck all the fluid out of there? brake fluid has some properties that are really good for what it's designed to do, but then it has some other properties that are really bad for other parts of the car. So I want you to think about some of that. And also, had a car this happened to several years ago. Petroleum-based products, which are, engine oil, transmission fluid, anything of that nature, wreak havoc on brake systems. They will do all kinds of bad things. All the seals swell up, hoses start degrading. So if you ever get a brake that has been contaminated with motor oil or something like that, you're going to have to completely redo the entire system. And on some cars, that's just not worth it. Okay, I got the lines loose, and they're out of the way. So then I'm going to get my setup for taking the 2 bolts that hold the master cylinder onto the vacuum booster, because this car does have power brakes. Okay, upon inspection of trying to get a socket, a ratchet, and an extension, this master cylinder sets too far down, so we're going to use the same 14mm wrench to break the nuts loose, and then we're going to switch to a ratchet wrench, which there is enough room for those. These are a great tool, so if you're looking to start out buying tools, I would highly invest in a lifetime guaranteed set of your favorite brand of ratchet wrenches. There's one nut. Here's the second one. Now we make sure our hook lines are out of the way. We slide the master cylinder off. And there it is. And you can see here, look, it's a little bit wet around here. I think this rear seal on this master cylinder has been leaking a little bit too. Notice, I'm tipping it with the ports up so any brake fluid doesn't run out that's in the residual in the cylinder. Okay, the next step is bench bleeding. So if you'll notice, I've got these hoses and I've got these adapters that go into the side of the master cylinder. That's going to allow us to pre-fill the cylinder with brake fluid. If you'll notice, I've already got some fluid in there, and there are air bubbles already coming up from it seeping down there. Well, we can accentuate that process by using a screwdriver or other round, similarly blunt object to work the master cylinder as if you're pushing the brake pedal. So I'm going to get you guys set up here, and I will show you how to do that. Also, I've got it clamped in a vise with a rag so it didn't scratch the surface. I'm going to insert this. I'm going to go slow because I don't want to splash brake fluid all over the place. But I want to make complete and total strokes until I get no more air bubbles coming out as the brake fluid is getting pumped through the system. We'll note that you want to make sure you use clean, brand new brake fluid from a sealed container, because I told you earlier about some of those properties that brake fluid is really good for. It has some other issues if you leave it open. And as you're filling out your worksheet, I want you to answer the question that's based on that. We are just about done. I'm still getting a few little air bubbles here. Let's just do it. I wish I had a smaller camera so you guys could be looking at this as it's going up and down. But I'm filming with the iPad, so we're using what we got. Now the reason this is called bench bleeding, and I want you guys to think about why we would go ahead and do this before we put it on the car. I'll tell you in the next video when we actually replace the front brake caliper and brake hose, and you'll see why it's going to be much easier to do. So, okay, I'm going to call that good. I'm not getting any more air bubbles. Everything works nice and smooth. So I'll get this set up off of here and we'll get it installed in the car. I decided to leave the brake bleeding setup on the master cylinder until I get it bolted onto the power brake booster, so that way it doesn't drip brake fluid very long, because brake fluid is bad to be dripped around on stuff. So I'm going to get these nuts started. This is where it helps if you have small little petite fingers. Get into tight spaces here. Okay, we got our ratchet wrench. We're going to use it to snug these up. Sorry about that. Okay, now I'll come back with my box end wrench and put the final snug on them, so I know that thing's going to be tight enough it's not going to fall off or work itself loose while we're working on the rest of the car. Okay, now we can very carefully pinch off our brake hoses here, let them drain. I don't want to be wearing any brake fluid. Take this one, put it over here. That one drained out. Roll it up so I'm not dripping all over the place. Grab the clip. Okay, so now one at a time I'm going to take the little plastic adapters off, and then very quickly try to screw the brake line back in so I don't have brake fluid running all over the place. You want to make sure you get this started straight so that you don't cross thread the flare nut. That would be a bad deal. And you can go ahead and use your open end wrench to get it run most of the way down, just like we did when we took it off. And it's going in nice and smooth. Okay, it's snug. We'll stop there. Do the front one. But first, I want to make sure this bail is back up around on the top, so that way I can put the lid on and snap it down. So I use both hands. I use one to hold the line, and I start the nut on the master cylinder. I go back to my wrench, and it's threading in nice and smooth. I want to know why this thing has two reservoirs and two brake lines. Okay, back to my flare nut wrench. We're going to put that on. If you'll notice, it has a different shape if you don't remember your tools. See how the shape's different than the regular open-end wrench? These need to be tight enough to seal, but you don't want to put them on there so tight that they crush the line. And now, since we're going to be working on the rest of these brakes, I don't need to worry about filling the master cylinder all the way up. So I'm going to go ahead and put the cover on as not to contaminate the brake fluid. I'm going to pick up tools and that'll be enough for today's video.